Okay, folks, you guys know me, Ali here. I'm again with Patrick. I would have to say, of the trainings that we've done with Patrick, I would say that this was probably the most the one that had the biggest impact on Riviera and the success of Riviera. And when I went to Patrick when we first started 10 years ago, which was the genesis of the relationship, it was like, hey, Patrick, I'm really getting tired of going down the sand hill and doing the grip and grin and having small talk conversations. And, for one, I'm not very good at that. And it just didn't feel right, So, how do I create relationships with these folks? So at the end of the day, they're comfortable working with me, and we're having something a little bit more higher value in terms of conversations, as opposed to, hey, hey, how you doing, Bob? What's going on? But something that was meaningful for both parties. So this was really the genesis of NRM for Riviera, and probably the thing that really set us on our way to making to being a successful recruiting firm in such a short period of time. So I think this is probably one of the most important topics if you're in the business of monetizing your network, that benefits both parties. So with that, I'll hand it off to you, Patrick.
Right, thank you. Way to add the pressure here. But no, this is you basically hit the nail on the head. I'm very thrilled and excited to be able to talk to you guys about this today, because it's very close to my heart. And so let me do that. Let me start off real quick by doing what I always do, and that is introduce Maven real quick. We're not going to spend too much time on it, but we're an executive coaching firm, and we help leaders achieve their fullest potential. And we're doing that by focusing on relationships. And the reason we're focusing on relationships is very simple. You don't know a single person who reached the top without help of others. And it's just one of those things that we don't pay enough attention to, even though relationships can impact the trajectory of our career, of our business, whatever it is, in a way that nothing else can. It's just a matter of fact, right? And so over the years, we've had the luxury of working with awesome people, not just Ali, but partners at Sequoia Capital, Andreessen Horowitz, even Benchmark, and a bunch of CEOs at unicorn startups. And one thing that became very persistent is that people came back to us saying, you gave me superpowers. And so we ended up saying, maybe that's the businesses that we're in, the business of unleashing superpowers. And they're basically these three: leverage, intent, and fellowship. Leverage is really the idea of teaching leaders that have an EA how to best delegate and get a lot more leverage out of that. We've been time and time again able to prove that we can save 8 to 10 hours of an executive's time every week by doing it. The next thing is intent. That's just the idea of being a lot more intentful in how we allocate our time, so that we focus on those things that move the needle most, or give us, something along the path of where we want to go, even if it's in the personal realm of things. And then finally, fellowship is obviously what we're going to be talking about today, and that is the idea that you can't do it alone if you have a vision that you're pursuing. And you need to get people to join you and also follow you, and preferably through hell and back. But it's not just about the team that you need to set up. You need to also create a fan base, if you will, around you. Your network you need your network to support you, to cheer you on. And the best way they can do that is by getting them to give you access to these types of breakthrough opportunities that we get from time to time, that can actually be the difference between a decent outcome in terms of your career or a fantastic one. And that's basically what I'm here to talk about today. So before I jump in and talk more about exactly how we do this, can I see a show of hands? Well, all of you guys should see in the bottom a raise hands. And the raise hands is how many of you guys here are thinking or believing that relationships are absolutely critical to your success in the role you're in? Can I just see a show of hands? I know it's a rhetorical question, but I just want to make sure we'll see. So for example, it looks like 2/3 of you guys have raised their hand. So a real strong majority of people here. And I bet that here, Ryan and Ryan Dotson, you probably would raise your hand too if you are paying attention. Um, Good. So the whole point is like, look, we're all in the same boat. If you believe that relationships aren't critical for you to be successful, then you're here at the right place, because we're going to talk about this exactly right now. And the way I want to start is by asking you if you resonate with this simple statement. The statement says, good things come to those that work their ass off and never give up, right? It's one of those things that if you go back into Ali's history, you know that Ali and Mikey worked really hard to get Riviera to what it is today. And most people think that that's the paradigm and how we operate. And I certainly think it's true. You need to work hard to be successful, but it's something that we often over-bias on, that hard work is the thing that will make it work. And it's not the most smartest way to do it, right? And that's why I want to introduce you guys to another idea, another statement, and see if you resonate just as much with that. And that is that good things come to those who take care of people and make it personal, right? And you can already see the imagery I chose is very different, because the second part is actually a lot easier to do. It is almost like irrigation. You just add water to plants, and then you will have, then you just have to watch the plants grow. And that's exactly how relationships really work. So good. And what I'm going to do today is actually try to teach you exactly how to do this, how to just simply add water and therefore become more successful in generating opportunities from your network than doing the grinding hard work that most of us use as a default strategy. Good. We're here to talk about opportunities, right? This is what we want to do. And if we want to get more opportunities, we have to ask ourselves, where do they come from? Where do our opportunities come from? And so I'm curious, how many of you guys consider themselves in one way or the other? Can I see another show of hands? Looking at the attendee list here. How many of you guys believe that you are in a referral-based business? Meaning that a majority, a massive amount of the best opportunities you'll ever see in your career will come to you in form of a referral. Yeah, you know, more than half again of you guys, so that's really good news. Most likely 70% of you guys here today feel that way. And so what we need to ask ourselves is like, okay, if I'm a referral-based business, we have to basically realize one simple thing, and that is, if you are in a referral-based business, then 80% of those opportunities you will get from people you know in form of referrals. It is the biggest factor to your success and your ability to grow your business if you're in a referral-based business. It's just a simple fact. And the problem that you'll face if you are in such a business is that it's very hard to use traditional marketing tactics towards a referral-based business, right? What you need to do is you need to focus on driving more referrals to your doorstep. And so that's the question I'm going to ask right now. It's like, well, if that's what we need to do, we need to ask ourselves, well, what drives referrals? What makes them happen? And again, most people will answer with this common ground thing of like, you know, if you're out there, if you're working hard, referrals will just come. And it's certainly true, but I think it's a default reaction that isn't optimal. What we want to do is basically say, well, referrals is a process, right? And if it's a process and we understand that process, we can probably change the process or manipulate the process to get a lot more referrals. And the beautiful thing about referrals is that the process itself is actually very simple, because it hinges only on two things, in my view. And the two things I want to walk you guys through real quick. Number one, it's timing, right? One factor that drives a referral to your doorstep is timing, right? It is the moment in time when somebody you know comes across somebody else who has a need that you would like to fulfill. Right? When that happens, we have absolutely zero control over. Need arises when need arises. There's nothing we can do about it, right? So the problem is we have no control over this particular factor of timing. The only silver lining that I would argue with you guys right now is if I could snap my finger like this and make all opportunities in your network right now transparent to you, what you will find out is that there are way more opportunities in your network right now than you actually hear about. In fact, I would argue you're only seeing about 5% of what's in your network. So the good news in all of this is that basically getting you from 5% to 10% is only a 5% increase. So it's a marginal effort. It's an easy effort. But going from 5% to 10% is a doubling of what you're seeing today. So the good news is referral-based businesses in terms of generating referrals are typically so inefficient that the first few steps you take can be very profound in terms of how they have an impact on your business. All right. And so the reality, however, of timing is we have no control over it. So we need to take a look at that second factor. And that second factor that drives referral to your doorstep is the ability of somebody to think of you at the time he or she comes across that, that opportunity you would like to serve. That ability is absolutely crucial. And it's basically the intriguing thing about this ability that it's driven by one thing, and that is how top of mind you are at the time they come across that opportunity. If you are top of mind, the likelihood that they will think of you goes up dramatically, right? And if they think of you, there's a very good chance you're going to hear about this opportunity. So mindshare is the key factor, how top of mind you are. And the good news here is that you have almost 100% control over staying top of mind with anybody in your network. It is a choice that you can make. So let me show you guys how I think that plays out in the real world, right? So here's a graph. Some of you guys might have seen this before, but the graph has mindshare on one side, and basically on the other axis, we have time in terms of months. Mindshare goes from 0% to 100%. And so your mindshare goes up and down depending on how you interact with people. And so let's pay this through. So you have lunch with somebody, obviously you have 100% mindshare. What then happens is that basically after lunch, you say goodbye, you go back to your office, you go back to your inbox, you have lots of work to do. And so things basically run by. First, a few days go by, then weeks, and then months. And basically what happens in that person's mind, let's call him Michael, right? In Michael's brain, you met with Michael. In Michael's brain, your mind share is decaying and decaying further and decaying further. As the weeks and months go by, eventually it decays below a threshold where he is physically speaking, I'm talking about neurons in his brain, physically speaking, not capable of thinking of you, even if you were to come across that opportunity that would be perfect for you, right? And so what happens is time goes by, and I bet most of you guys are nodding after 6 months or longer, you realize, oh my God, I haven't reached out in a while to Michael. I should reach out to him. So you reach out, you send a meeting request, your mindshare goes back up to 100%. 2 weeks later, you guys get together again for lunch, or today it's probably more Zoom meetings. Michael sits down with you, and the first thing out of his mouth is like, oh God, Ian, I wish you would have reached out to me earlier. A few weeks earlier, I had the perfect opportunity for you, right? And the interesting thing that goes off in our brain when somebody says that to us, by the way, I wish you guys could nod, but anybody been in a situation like this before? Can you show a raise of hands? So Evan says yes, Mike says yes. Yeah, you guys seen these situations. They're infuriating, aren't they? Sam, yeah, look at that. Richard, awesome. George, good. So all of you guys have had that moment in some way or other before. And the thing that you think is probably, you think about Michael, you know, you asshole, like what the F, right? Why would you not think of me, right? But the interesting thing we have to realize is he's only one person to blame. And that's us, right? That's us, because we let that mind share of Michael decay below that threshold where Michael is not capable of thinking of us. His neurons in his brain have been rewired to be used for something else, because our brain is constantly changing based on the challenges we face, because we weren't top of mind. So how do we solve that? The answer is actually relatively common sense based and easy. So again, another graph, the same graph, we have 0 to 100 on mindshare and time in terms of months going by. But this time something happens that is very different. We meet with Michael for lunch. We send him a follow-up email. After a week, we might actually do an introduction that we finally got an approval to do so. We help him with a professional challenge that we've learned about. They might read something on LinkedIn as a status update, or Twitter if you're there. You realize that it's his birthday and you actually send him a pretty memorable gift. And then again, 6 months are by and we meet with him for lunch. The difference here is that mind share was never able to decay below that certain threshold. And so the opportunities to come across intersect with that mind share, and there's a decent likelihood on on a decent likelihood that you are hearing about that opportunity because the person is capable of thinking of you when he or she comes across that opportunity at that point in time. And the key thing, I'm just smiling. I don't know if all of you guys see the thing, but Ali said that this is the money slide. Made me laugh earlier in a moment. But the key message is this: just because you're top of mind, is that a guarantee that you will get all of the opportunities from that particular person, Michael? No, of course not. But what we're doing here is we're playing a game of odds. It's similar to that book called Bringing Down the House. Show me hands who's read the book or seen the video, the movie 21. It's about these MIT kids going to, yeah, there you go, Evan and Sam. No, Ursula, very good. This is cool to hear that you know this game, this movie. It's, you know, MIT kids going to Las Vegas to basically do card counting on blackjack. And when you play blackjack, I think your winning chance of winning every game is 48%. And by counting cards, they are shifting the odds from 48 to 52%. Not a big change, but they were able to reap off millions of the casinos because they were able to do this. And this is what we're doing with your career, with your network. If you are staying top of mind with more of the right people, you will be capable of generating, you know, you're just playing the odds. You're going to win more often than not. And that is basically how you can truly influence your ability to generate the kind of opportunities that you're seeking. And here's the interesting thing: if you do this well, every once in a while, you come across this opportunity that we call breakthrough opportunities, these things that like are massive, that are really impressive, that can change your life in a very, you know, in a way that you might have not been dreaming of in some way or others. And all of us will have the chance of having that. But if we stay in touch with the right people in our network regularly and consistently, the chances of these breakthrough opportunities happening goes up tremendously. All right, let's take a quick breather here and sum up what we've learned so far, because I think it's very important that I do this. So we're here today because we want to get more opportunities out of our network. What we've learned is that these opportunities are driven by one thing and one thing only, and that is how much mind share you enjoy in that person's head. And so now we have to ask ourselves, well, what drives mind share? And the answer, we kind of already touched upon it, but let's put it in black and white, if you will, is interacting. Interactions with our network is what drives network. If you don't interact with somebody you don't know, you will never get a referral from that person. So we have to take a closer look at what interactions really are. And there are, again, two factors we are worrying about. Number one is the frequency, how often we touch somebody, right? And that is basically what Eric Lawson here had asked us about. How do you stay in touch with people in a regular way without coming across as too spammy or low value? So frequency is one of those things. The answer to Eric's question is that the other factor is being aware of what experience am I delivering? What experience impact do I deliver to the people that I'm reaching out to? And the answer to that is that frequency is relatively easy to solve, but what we need to focus on is making sure that we apply to a golden rule that we have here at MindMaven. That is that you need to make sure that every interaction you ever stage is either meaningful, relevant, or valuable. It's just that simple. If you do that, something really interesting happens to the question that basically Eric has stated here, right? If you make sure every interaction you ever stage, you cannot come across as somebody who's low value or spammy, because I'll give all of you guys here the permission to email me every day if it's a referral to somebody that we can serve, right? Of course, right? So a lot of people worry too much about spam and getting too low value, and therefore being too frequent. The thing is, you'll never get too frequent, especially if you're very good at delivering experiences that people will always perceive as meaningful, relevant, and valuable. Now, I bet that most of you guys are scratching your head and saying, well, Patrick, that's all really nice, and you kind of sound like Tony Robbins here, and I'm all fired up, but guess what? I have a day job, and I can't work another full-time job of delivering great experiences to people. And so I want to talk to you guys about how we do this. You know, where do you find valuable experiences? How do you go about it? And I'm invoking the classic image of an iceberg, because most of us are just thinking of the tip of the iceberg. So can anybody here write into the chat, what do you think is the most valuable thing you could do to me right now? I want to see what answers we're going to get. What do you guys think if you want to basically earn my referrals because I am the most powerful referral source for you? What is the best thing you could do to me? Come on. Make you laugh, Kai. I love that. That's awesome. Sure. Good point. But no, I want a little bit more classic answers right now, because it'll help me tell my story better. So anybody else? Come on. George, Dirk, Chris, help me solve a problem, George. Yeah, very good. One of the problems I have is business development, right? Growing my business. So of course, one of the best things you can do is send me referrals to people that might want to enjoy my Maiden's coaching. Hands down, right? But here's the interesting thing is, it is not scalable for you to become a BD person for me just so that you can earn my referrals. But the funny thing is, that's how we think about value. We always think about just the most valuable thing we could deliver to people, like business opportunities. Right? Yes, of course, that's the peak of the thing. But it's really hard in many cases because these things are hard to find. There aren't that many opportunities out there. And B, it could be very hard work. What we aren't doing enough is looking below the waterline of that iceberg to see what else is there. Number one is there are professional challenges that I have. George basically also said, like, solve a problem. And yes, for example, if you know a bunch of professional challenges about the people that you're meeting with, it is relatively easy to stay in touch with them, and you know, by offering them things that help them with professional challenges. And it doesn't have to be earth-shattering. It could just be an article on the search landscape, as Richard has wrote out here, right? Because I'm curious to see what's happening there, right? So the point that I'm making is there are a lot more professional challenges out there that you can actually utilize your network and your knowledge for to be helpful. And it doesn't have to be in a massive amount of a problem solver. It could be just an article that helps out and shows that you're thoughtful. People will appreciate you having reached out and thought of them when you saw that. And as a side effect, you are back to top of mind, right? And the same thing is with personal interests and passions. For example, Ali, I know that you're turned your video off, but you can still talk, right? If I were to come across an opportunity where few people that recently moved to Montana are also going to go riding a bike around the Bay Area, mountain biking on Mount Tam or something, and I'll let you know about that, you'll probably appreciate getting that, right? And so that's on the personal interests and passions. So long story short, it is a lot easier to stay in touch with people if you know their professional challenges, if you know their personal interests and passions. And so one of the pieces of advice I'm giving everyone is make sure that when you have Zoom calls with people, that a certain amount of that time is used in trying to learn about those things. I don't know how many of you guys participated in the Screw Small Talk session we gave last time, but a lot of what's in there helps with achieving the goal of learning about these two things. All right. So long story short, to make it very, very pragmatic, what we need to be doing is we need to make sure that you stay top of mind with the right people in your network. And the best thing you could do is become habitual about it by sending one email a day to somebody you would have not sent an email that day. Period. It's as easy as that. Because who's good at math? If you send one email a day, how many more emails will you send that year, in a year? Can anybody do the math for me and throw it up into the chat room? And the answer is probably relatively easy. Yes, so there we go, to 365. Fair enough. That's Evan. Thank you. Well, Evan, I think you must be an animal because you just seem to be working every single day. Most of us, especially me, I'll probably end up with like 260 the 5 days that I actually do work every day, but 260 emails every year. You must believe that something good will come through them, especially if these 260 people go to the right people. So at the end of the day, what I'm telling you is super easy, right? It's super simple. The question that I have for you guys is like, why are we not all doing this by now? Why is this so hard, right? And and what gets into the way? And the answer is an answer that will not surprise you. There are 3 barriers that you need to learn to overcome, and we're going to jump into those right now. Number 1 is, who do I reach out to? Who are the right people that actually I need to invest into mindshare management? Number 2 is, who's urgent? Sorry, the next barrier is the classic problem that we always have, that urgent things trump important things, even though important things let us achieve our goals faster and easier. One of the key realization that all of you guys should take away from this thing is that the problem with relationship and managing relationships is that we all agree here, relationships are important. There's no doubt about it, but they're very rarely urgent. Most of those things that I'm asking you to do will have very little to no urgency to it. So we got to learn how to overcome it. And then the last thing is, well, great. What am I going to send? This goes to Richard's question that he put out to everyone, which is some advice around balancing asks versus gives in your network. How do we go about this, right? So I'm going to try to cover all 3 of these items as I go with you through these points. And the first thing is we need to figure out who are the right people worth our time in terms of mindshare management. And the answer is very simple to come up with, in my view, at least. What we need to ask ourselves is, with whom do we have to stay top of mind with the most? And the answer is, of course, who are those people that will get you the most referrals? So a great place to do is ask, from whom have I gotten people to, referrals from in the past? Ask yourself that. Another question you can ask yourself is, well, who are the people in my network that come across the kind of opportunities I'm actually after, right? Who are the ones that see the type of opportunities I really want regularly, more often than others? And then the second factor you want to do, and who of those people are willing to actually refer them to me because I have the right type of relationship? Those 2 things will lead to names. Once you have those names, we're going to do something else. And that is, we're going to try to systemize this by putting them into buckets of groups of people. Oh, I'm getting a lot of referrals from current or former clients, or fellow co-workers, or other vendors, or your general professional and personal network, right? Learn this way about it. And try to start thinking about people like, oh, current clients can send me referrals. Well, besides the one that came to my mind, who else is there? And then that allows you to create a list of people belonging to different buckets that you can then start committing to staying top of mind. And ultimately, that becomes what I call your legends list. Legends are people, your legends are people that basically have the ability and the willingness to send you the kind of referrals that can make you wildly successful, right? So the homework I have for you is find your way to create your legend list. This is an example of mine. And a big point that I'm making is, yes, you can use any sorts of tools. There are great CRMs out there, but at the end of the day, what is most important for you is to basically just have it somewhere, even if you write it down on paper. And that is really, a simple example. Now, once you have that list, don't make it longer than 20 to 30 people, because you're going to get overwhelmed with being able to stay top of mind with all of them. So be very selective. Make it be, the nicest, the most valuable people, the true legends, if you will, in your network. And then ask yourself, how many of these people have not heard from you in the last 30 days? And most of you guys will have an appalling reaction to that, because you realize that there are a lot of N's instead of Y's in that sense. And that basically means you are missing out on opportunities, because the people you put on the list see the opportunities you're interested in regularly, and B, have a willingness to support you in that way. I'm seeing a note by Evan who's saying, this is a great list to stay top of mind with. Thank you. That's not the idea. You're not supposed to just copy mine and run with it. But there you go. Good. So the second thing is, how do we make this a priority? And without further ado, let me jump straight into the most helpful tool that all of you, I would argue, have seen at one point in their career, unless you just started, and that is the classic matrix of focusing on, try to structure your time in such a way that you will focus on those things that are urgent and important first. Then what we often do is that we do the things that are urgent but not important, and only then do we do important and urgent. And what we want to do is switch those around. First urgent and important, then important but not urgent, and only then you do urgent and but not important, right? A typical example of that is, getting the coffee in the, getting more coffee is sort of urgent but not important, although I bet many of you guys will throw it up. Evan, I got your message. It's all good. Don't worry. Good. So how do we solve this dilemma of urgent versus important the best way? The 3 tactics that I have for you. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but basic number 1 is you just got to make this mindshare management work important to you. So important that it becomes part of where you want to deliver great service. Think about it. You're not messing around with your clients when you're working with them. You're delivering the best service that you can get. At least I hope you are. So think about the mindshare management aspects that you have to do as a client. Make it be a client, just as the 5th client or the 6th client that you have. It's something that you pay enough attention to, the same amount of attention you would give actually a paying client. Why? Because this work will get you a lot more of those paying clients. So switch your mindset in terms of how you look at BD efforts in that sense. The second thing is find the right time. And the third thing is make it easy. So to make it easy, if I have time at the end, I'll talk to you about that. Finding the right time is something we're going to jump into right now. Number 1, one of the best things you can do is invest into what I call white space time. I'm not going to explain to you guys what exactly that is, besides that it is the most powerful tool you'll ever come across about staying proactive. Why? Because it's time blocking on your calendar, time that is white space time to do the proactive work you need to be doing to stay successful, to be wildly successful, to stay top of mind with the people that matter most. We've written a really nice ebook on it that we're sharing and happy to share for free. It's something you can download and read about how to do it. The difference between regular time blocking and white space time is that we build a really strong framework around blocking time on your calendar so that you end up using the time you blocked really well, instead of fucking around and doing reactive work in the time that you basically set aside to do some of your best thinking. All right. So that's a really awesome way to basically make this mindshare management stuff happen by just putting it on your calendar. The alternative is to basically do this thing that we've talked about in previous sessions, is to establish this 1 email a day as a habit that you basically can't help but to do because it feels as habitual as brushing your teeth in the morning, right? You don't forget to do that, and so you don't need to put it on your calendar, right? And the best way to establish such a habit is by using action triggers. Action triggers is the idea of piggybacking a new habit, developing a new habit on the back of an existing one. For example, some of you guys probably go get coffee at one point. You don't plan it. Well, before you go get coffee, basically whenever you think of coffee, whenever you think of coffee, and sorry, I'm just seeing the quote that Ali said here about coffee is for closers. Absolutely. So I'm never going to use it again as something that's not important. Coffee is important. We all have coffee. So when you think of getting coffee, make sure that at that time you say, you know what, let me first send that 1 email that I want to send today to somebody I would have not reached out to. And then, only then do I allow myself to get a coffee. And if you do that for 21 days or longer, very consistently, is a pretty good chance that you're establishing that email a day as its own habit in its own right. And that's basically the powerful thing. Now, the third thing that we had is like, great, now you have a list of people and you found the time to do it, but you're scratching your head and saying, well, what am I supposed to say to these people? I don't know. I don't want to come across as spammy. I don't want to come across as irrelevant, and so on and so forth. And that is obviously a big part of what we train people on. You've gotten a big, good taste out of that if you participated in the Screw Small Talk piece. But today what I want to do is give you the most simplest and most powerful practices we have around how to do it. And that is basically using our freebies. We have 5 freebies, and these freebies are things where I could argue, with any person with whom you have a decent relationship, one of these 5 freebies will be able you'll be able to use that in reaching out. There is, I'm not going to go into all of them, but in the companion email that we're going to be sending out to everybody who participates, we have that link to the Whitespace book, but we also have a link to a small ebook that talks about the freebies, so you can learn more about that there. The one that I want to talk about is what I call the "It's been a while" ping, because one of the things you have to realize right now is a fantastic time to reach out to people and ask them, how are you doing? How are you holding up? So you can do that with almost anyone right now. So you have absolutely no excuse not to send more than 1 email a day to any of these people you would put on your legends list to just check in with them. I know that Ali and Mikey had done that already. They even use text messages in Ali's case, in Mikey's case, for example. So it's something very easy to do. However, the "it's been a while" ping is typically what I call the bottom feeder approach. It's if you can't come up with something else, do it. The point of why I still want you to do it is it's still better than not reaching out to anyone, because if you don't reach out to anybody, your mindshare doesn't go up. So just checking in with a "hey, how you doing" is a fantastic thing. I would highly recommend you just do this right now and do repeatedly. The other one that I have is basically focused on this very simple habit that I really am a huge fan of, because it's probably the most powerful tool we have in all of our coaching assets. And it's basically say something positive. Think about that person and think of something that is positive about him. And then basically, as you think it, make sure that you genuinely believe it, and then basically write it up in an email. And I could take any of you guys. I could take you, Kate, or Kyle, or Lucas right now, make you talk to me, and we can come up with one person that you throw at me, and you and I will find something you could probably say to that person along the lines of these 5 freebies. So this is all basically where I want to stop and take a small breather again to basically say this. I want to share this quote with you guys. It's from the very famous UCLA basketball coach. I think he's the most successful basketball coach in history, at least in college basketball. And his thing is so true that I want you guys to burn it into your brain. He says, when you improve a little each day, eventually big things occur. Don't look for the big improvements. Seek small improvements one day at a time. If you go back through all of the presentation that I just done, you'll see that I haven't given you one single big idea. All I have given you is small little calibrations, right? When you meet with people, ask them about their professional challenges and personal interests. Learn about those things, small. Send 1 email a day. That's going to cost you three minutes a day, small. Say something positive whenever, the habit of positive alacrity, it's small. But what we've seen time and time again is if you do this over and over again, you will basically see that massively huge things will change in your life. Specifically, if every once in a while you get hit by these breakthrough opportunities that you'll get, and you'll probably increase the likelihood of getting them by following this advice that I shared with you guys. So before I move on to talk a little bit more about what else you can do, I want to ask all of you guys a question. I want to see how many, and by the way, start asking questions here in the chat, because we're getting to the end, and obviously we have quite a few that people might want to ask us, so write them up and Ali will ask them to me. Can I see a show of hands? How many of you guys have an EA or anticipate at one point in the future of their career to have one? Can I see a show of hands? How many? All right, so we got a few of you guys. Yep, coming up. Come on, show me. I want more, because what I will do is I will decide to use the 8 minutes to give you some of the best tips around that. So it's not bad. 11, right? We got like 30 people here. So a third of you guys are feeling that way and a third don't. So I'm going to jump in for the next 8 minutes and basically say, talk to you guys a little bit about how you can power boost all of those things that I just talked about, right? Because at the end of the day, what I said is, to overcome the urgency versus important thing, we need to make it so easy that you have no excuse not to do it. And the way we do that is by achieving leverage. You need to get leverage into your relationship management aspects. And the only way you can do that is by hiring an EA or somebody virtual who can support you that, and then learning how to integrate well with that person. Because most people think, unfortunately, wrong about an EA. An EA is in most eyes for people in administrative overhead. To me, if you want a referral-based business, an EA is the best marketing investment you could ever make. And so instead of calling them an EA, we want you to turn that person into an EM. We call them EM for engagement manager. And the reason being is because they are very unique. They are a hybrid between an EA and a chief of staff, and they have two single goals that they basically that they do for you. They need to basically free up as much of your time of things that you are currently spending your time on that isn't producing the results you need or helping you along the way of being proactive. And number two is they're there to help you engage with your network in a much easier, much faster way. So I'll give you some examples of how I recommend working with an EM. And when I told you that I worked with Sequoia Capital and all of these other people, it is because I taught them how to get leverage into their day-to-day practice to generate a lot more high quality deal flow, right? And so let me give you a few examples of how you can work with an EM, right? So again, I'm going to ask you to raise your hands. Do you guys think it's a good idea to send a follow-up email with somebody you spent at least 30 minutes or more with? Is that a good experience after everything that I've said? And if I'm not getting 90%, I'm walking out, because that would be an insult right now. Come on, you guys got to believe this. 17 of 29, come on, everybody, raise your hands. Okay, there are a few on the phone that can't raise their hands, so you guys are exempt. So most of you guys believe that, right? So of course, we should. But why don't we do it? Well, because it's one of those things where relationships is important. We should be doing it, but urgency will just take over. There are way too many other things that we need to be doing. So how do we overcome that? By working with an EM. The answer is very simple. We're going to leverage 3 facts about this follow-up email. Fact number 1 is basically that no one has ever valued you for writing an email. They never have, they never will. You're going like this? I'm not surprised. They only value for sending it, right? Fact number 1. Fact number 2. Fact number 2 is you can talk 4 to 5 times faster than you can type. And fact number 3 is that you can talk wherever you are, while you can only type when you're sitting in front of a keyboard. Right? And so we use these 3 facts by coming up with a very simple, no-brainer process of how you can work with your EA, or what we call an EM, by simply dictating the email you want to send into your phone. That phone ships it to your EA, preferably into a task management system. She listens to it, turns what you said into something that reads well, because we do not talk the way we write, and puts that into your draft folder, right? So now, if you had an 8 meeting day or a 10 meeting day, right? At the end of the day, you'll have 8 to 10 emails sitting there. We'll follow up with every single person. And the reason you'll be able to do that is because you lost any excuse of not doing them. Previously, if you wanted to do that and you wanted to do it in the right way, in a way that is actually one of those experiences that is either meaningful, relevant, or valuable, it would have taken you 10 minutes. Right? So 8 meetings, that's an hour and a half of extra time. We just don't have that. But with an EM in play, that gets reduced to about a minute. And that's an order of magnitude efficiency improvement that you will not find anywhere else in your career ever. It's just a fact, right? 10x is very hard. And that's the difference between you going from good to great, right? Let me Let me give you one more example before we stop. Do you guys want to see another example of what you can do with an EM? Show me your hands again. Yeah, okay, good. I see all the hands. Thank you, guys. I appreciate that. The next example is a very simple one. If you, have you ever been in a situation like this where you've had eight or more meetings back to back, and by the time 8 o'clock comes around at night, you feel like you've got nothing done in terms of your proactive priorities, and because of 8 meetings that you had a lot more work on your hand, right? It's probably pretty real that most of you guys have had those days in one way or the other, right? And so by 8 o'clock, you go to your email and you try to handle it, right? And you feel like you have a lot more work to do, and you feel overwhelmed, and you know, things feel like shit. The way to overcome that is to make sure that every single meeting, by the end of the meeting, you've gotten everything done that meeting needed you to do, right? And so we solve that by doing something that we call meeting debriefs. Meeting debriefs are exceptionally powerful concepts that where you dictate everything that came out of the meeting to your assistant, and she helps you deliver, produce, do whatever workflows need to be kicked off with her, right? And so there are 4 things that I think people should always debrief meetings on. Number 1, of course, all of the action items that were agreed upon. Those are the next steps when it relates to the business, but also the gives and gets that we are offering and receiving to deepen the relationships. You want to collect all of the personal interests and passions you learned about. We already know why those are important. Professional challenges as well. And of course, about facts are any kind of fact that you might know, including the fact that the person that you met with has a 6-year-old daughter who's suffering quite severely from asthma, right? Because what are the benefits, and why are the benefits of such a simple practice so powerful? And the benefits are so powerful because number 1, if you are, for example, offering an introduction as part of a meeting, and by the way, if you spend 30 minutes with anybody, you should always walk away with one introduction you offered. You know, if you're willing to spend that much time with that person, you might as well do the extra step. We're here to teach you how to make that very easy. But if you do that and you promise something and you follow through on it, you come across as A, trustworthy, and B, very smart. There's a weird bias in our brain where we think, you know, there's a connection between those 2 things, even though it's not. But we all know coming across in the Silicon Valley as somebody who's smart and trustworthy is about the biggest competitive advantage you can get. And so that introduction example is completely 100% out-handable, outsourceable to an EM, because it's always the same thing. First, we have to ask the other person doesn't come back. So we have to ask again. Often, if we handle it on our own, we forget, right? You're probably all nodding right now. So we end up not delivering on it. And here's the reality. If you operate in Silicon Valley and you are delivering on 80% or more of your promises, you are going to stand above the noise, because the noise is 50%. How often do you get things promised that people don't deliver? I think over the last few years, it's just gotten worse. So if you want to stand out, do that. And meeting debriefs are a key factor for it, because you empower through that debrief your assistant to help you with this. The other thing is that it's much easier to stay top of mind with people if you know and record it into a system, all of those professional challenges and personal interests. All you have to do is like, oh, it's time to reach out to so-and-so. What do I know about him? Oh, yes, he talked about struggling with being less reactive. Well, I should introduce him to Patrick, because Patrick is awesome at that. And then number 3, go and realize how much time you can save on the tax that every meeting has. Every meeting has a tax rate of 20 to 50%. If you take the meeting and it's an hour long, you probably need another half an hour to deal with the outcome that that meeting produced. You can get that down to about 5% through meeting debriefs. And then finally, if you can massively increase your velocity, if I use that example that you had around the introduction, if you have a systematic approach of producing those, you will deliver those introductions faster, but you will also follow up to those introductions offered to you faster and more regularly. And that can be all outsourced to an EM whose primary job is to handle exactly those things at that point. And so I know that I'm running out of time. I want to basically open up for questions here. The last thing is, and if you collect things like the asthma story that I said, and you start another meeting 6 months down the road with Michael, and Michael told you that his daughter is suffering from asthma, and let's say his spouse, his partner is feeling very guilty about it because it's it's the genes. You can, and you start the meeting by saying, hey, Michael, before we get going, how's your daughter doing? Is she any better? You will blow that person's mind because you show not only that you care about him, but about those people he cares about more. And there's no way that you can keep it in your head because that information will decay in it as well. But if you have a system like the meeting debrief, it works. There's, of course, a lot more that we have. We came up with over 50 different playbooks. So this is basically literally just the start of what you can do in terms of leverage. One of the things I didn't have time to get into was inbox shadowing, where your EM actually is helping you not only triage the email, but deliver better, more meaningful emails to people through your inbox. And that's basically where we've seen time and time again that you can save about 55% of the time you spend in your email. You can save it on a day-to-day basis. So if you're a person who is spending 2 to 3 hours a day in email, you can get an hour to an hour and a half back every day. And just imagine what you could do with that. Okay, and so with that, I'm going to leave it and open up for questions. Ali, do you think we've gotten any questions? I don't think we have.
I've got one question for you, Patrick.
All right.
Is there a system that you would recommend, like to log all this stuff in?
No, unfortunately right now not. So the system that I like most it was Contactually, but they got sold to Compass Real Estate and they drifted off into real estate. Nobody's been able to build something that is absolutely perfect for this. And so my answer is very simple. Use whatever system you're using right now. For example, if you're using Outlook contacts or Google contacts, like dictate those thoughts or type those thoughts that you need, the debrief information into those records as notes, right? And try to basically find a way to work with whatever you have. There isn't fortunately isn't anything there. I could throw some things for you guys to check out. And I do have a list of my favorite NRM tools if people want to find out. So Affinity is one that I think is trying to solve this, and they're working hard to get there. They're not quite there yet. There's Nimble CRM. I like that. And I think a company called Cloze, which is CLOZE. They have a pretty nifty tool there, and it's relatively lightweight and cheap.
Got it. The other question I hear a lot, Patrick, is I don't have any legends or champions. Mm-hmm. Basically my network is pretty lightweight, or my list of contacts is pretty limited.
Yes.
What would you say to those people?
So what I would say is, like, look, you have a very awesome situation in the sense that your cup isn't full with water yet. Any professional that has worked for more than 10 years has a very major problem to deal with, and that is that their network is full and they become complacent. And what that means is that you're not pumping new relationships into that network because you feel like you have enough. You can't deal with more, but that network will get more stale. And so as it gets more stale, you become less relevant, or your network becomes less relevant in helping you be successful. So no matter who you are, and that's the answer, is you have to invest into new relationships. So people that ask you that question, Ali, they have a really good situation in the sense that they can now design to fill that cup with the right people. And that you do by doing something that we call proactive outreach, by reaching out to people to develop relationships in a way that allow it. So for example, look at people as, sometimes we call them rising stars. Who in your network is impressing you. And if you were to give them, if you were to travel with them 10 years into the future, they would become people that you would call legends, right? The whole relationship management aspects is one of patience. And so become very good at just like reaching out, go to events, now the virtual ones where people are networking. In the past, when we're back to our normal, go to networking events, meet people, build your network out, and then basically just look at these people as like, oh, I trust that this person is going to go, that person is impressive, and build real meaningful relationships and still do the same thing with them. Because the reality is that legends and champions are good at getting your referrals, but anybody can get your referrals, right? They just have to come across it. And so all you do is you basically build up your first list of people as good as you can with whatever you have, and you start learning to stay top of mind with them. If it establishes itself as a habit, over time, of course, the quality of legends you get will go up through the roof. You guys, we added a poll here. Really important for me if you could fill it out and see if you think I've done a good job, so much so that you would actually recommend this to others that are similar to you, because it tells us how, if we're doing a good job and so on and so forth. So please fill it out if you're still here. That's really, really important. Any other questions? We probably have time for one more before we hop off. Otherwise, I think I'll answer the question on advice balancing ask versus gives that Richard, are you still here? Can you quickly say yes? Yes, you're here, right? Just say yes, because I want to answer that question for you about balancing. So Richard, just to repeat it, is asking advice. Do I have any advice around balancing ask and gives with your network? So don't think of it as balance, basically, because it's always going to be imbalanced. This is the biggest frustration that people will see in networks, and that is that the ratio is about 8-to-1. You have to pump 8 items of value into your network to just get 1 back in terms of asks and gives, right? So reset that. I mean, I guess that's a balance, but think of it that way. Just become somebody who's constantly helpful to people, hopefully in a scalable and efficient way. That's why this whole EM thing is just so incredibly powerful, because you can do 10 times as much as you could do on your own, because most of you guys have a day job, right? And then basically good things come back in whatever ratio will establish itself. But the key point, Richard, is if you do that, what will happen is that you will avoid this really awkward, uncomfortable situation where you have not touched somebody for years that you actually have a pretty decent relationship with. And now that person becomes heavily valuable to you because he might be the person that you need to access to get access to somebody else. And so you want to reach out to that person with an ask, and it feels very uncomfortable. Has anybody ever been there? Show me hands, but that's, and you're like, I don't feel comfortable doing it. And so sometimes you actually hold yourself back from doing it. And so the whole idea of like pumping value into your network is that you just make sure you stay top of mind with people, and they've had interactions with you where you didn't ask anything. So all of a sudden, out of 5 interactions, 4 were nice ones that like you showed some value, you did something meaningful or relevant. And then only 1 of them is where you're asking for something. It becomes like a natural experience. What you'd want to avoid is that you're the kind of guy in the network who always pops up when he needs something and disappears again, right? And that's basically how I would answer that question of yours. What do you say, Richard? Was that helpful? Okay, good. Awesome. Well, Ali, what do you say? I think we should call it quits, let people get back to work.
Yeah.
But I had a fantastic time doing this with you. Thank you all for being so active with your hand raising. I know that was just a mouse click for you, but to me, it means a lot because I feel like I can interact with you. Don't forget to fill out the poll before you head out. And we're doing this because we want to help people as much as we can. If you want to help us, think of us in these times, whenever you come across people that seem to be struggling. with any of these things we discussed today, send them our way, send them to our blog post, or just introduce them to me. We're happy to help anybody who comes by. Good. And with that, we're going to hop off. Thank you so much, and goodbye, everyone.